Today we're going to learn about some of the parts of neurons and the different neurotransmitters and what those neurotransmitters do. So before we get into the neurotransmitters, we need to learn a little bit about the parts of the neuron. The definition of a neuron is a nerve cell, otherwise known as the basic building block of the nervous system. So moving left to right, we see the dendrites. They are bushy branching extensions of a neuron that receive messages and conduct impulses towards a cell body. So these are where the neurotransmitters from the neighboring neuron would go to be translated into a neural impulse that would then go through the axon. The axon is an extension of a neuron ending in a branching terminal. So you see this little line here. This is the axon. And wrapped around the axon is the myelin sheath, which is a layer of fatty tissue segmentally encasing the fibers of many neurons, and it enables vastly greater transmission speed of neural impulses, and the impulse hops from one to the next. So at the end of the axon and the myelin sheath, there are axon terminal buttons, which are the branches at the end of the axon that contain the neurotransmitters, and they shoot them across the synapse, and they also suck up the excess neurotransmitter in a process called reuptake. Now the synapse is the space right here. It's the junction between the axon tip of the sending neuron and the dendrite or cell body of the receiving neuron. It's the tiny gaps, and they are normally called a synaptic gap or a synaptic cleft. Moving on to the neurotransmitters, they are defined as chemical messengers that traverse the synaptic gaps between neurons. When released by sending neurons, they travel across the synapse and blind receptor sites on the receiving neuron, thereby influencing whether the neuron will generate a neural response. Now looking at the actual names of the neurotransmitters and their function, we'll start with acetylcholine, otherwise known as ACH. It enables learning and memory, and it also triggers muscle contraction. Now moving on to a more widespread known one, it would be dopamine, and this influences movement, learning, attention, and emotion. Another well-known one would be serotonin. It affects mood, hunger, sleep, and arousal. Another well-known neurotransmitter would be endorphins. This is the morphine within. It's the natural opiate-like neurotransmitters, and they're linked to pain control and to pleasure. So if you were to say, break a bone, and you didn't feel it right away, that would mean that your body's endorphins are going and dulling the pain for you. Now on to some more lesser-known neurotransmitters. We have glutamate, and it is a major excitatory neurotransmitter involved in memory. Next we have GABA. Its full name is gamma-aminobutyric acid, and it is a major inhibitory neurotransmitter. And lastly, we have norepinephrine, and it helps with alertness and arousal. Now moving on to what can happen when you have too little or too much of the different neurotransmitters. First up, we have acetylcholine. So the acetylcholine actually deteriorates with Alzheimer's disease, which I'm sure you're familiar with. It's a degenerative brain disorder. And then we have glutamate, which is actually the G in MSG in the food. It's monosodium glutamate, but that's the G in there. That's where it comes from. So an oversupply can stimulate the brain, resulting in seizures or headache, which is why some people choose to avoid MSG in their food. And after that we have GABA, which an undersupply of GABA is linked to seizures, tremors, and insomnia. And up next we have norepinephrine, and an undersupply of that can suppress your mood. An undersupply of serotonin is actually linked with depression, but if you were ever wondering what antidepressants do, it raises the serotonin in the brain. And last we have dopamine. An excess of dopamine causes schizophrenia, and very low levels result in Parkinson's disease. If you don't know, Parkinson's disease is a degenerative disorder, again, like Alzheimer's, but it attacks the central nervous system, and it affects movement, and a lot of times with Parkinson's patients, you'll see them have tremors. So now quickly going through, we can see that there's a direct correlation from what the neurotransmitter does to what happens when there's a surplus or deficiency. The acetylcholine neurotransmitter goes hand in hand with memory, and with Alzheimer's disease, it's a progressive disease that destroys memory and other important mental function. It makes sense that a deficiency in acetylcholine would translate to memory issues. And thinking about to a little bit ago, glutamate, it makes sense that an oversupply would overstimulate the brain because the glutamate is a really major excitatory neurotransmitter. So seizures happen when the brain gets way too excited. And then on to GABA, with an undersupply linking to seizures, tremors, and insomnia. It makes sense because it's a major inhibitory neurotransmitter. And then with norepinephrine, undersupplying and would result in a suppressed mood. Makes sense because it helps alertness and arousal, which goes hand in hand with your mood. And then with serotonin, having an undersupply being linked with depression makes sense because serotonin affects mood, hunger, sleep, and arousal. And with dopamine, which influences movement, learning, attention, and emotion. Schizophrenia is a disorder that affects a person's ability to think, feel, and behave clearly, and dopamine would help regulate that normally, but in a schizophrenic person, they are not able, as I said, to think, feel, or behave clearly. And on the other side of that, we have dopamine deficiency, which results in Parkinson's disease. And a lot of times people with Parkinson's have tremors, which would make sense with dopamine because it controls your movement. So thanks for watching. I hope you learned something new about the body and how it works.